In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful, my dear students, I welcome you to the third lecture of research methodology. The topic is steps in research or research process. There are several steps when we are conducting a research. First of all, formulating the research problem. First of all, you have to formulate a research problem. You have to identify the gap in research. You have to find out a question which needs an answer, which is researchable. While formulating the research problem, you have to do proper planning. There are several step-by-step things which you have to do to formulate the research problem. In different books of research, different researchers or different writers have considered it as step 1, and some has considered the 3 steps in 1. So in this lecture we would be considering the 3 points in 1: formulating the hypothesis, formulating a research problem, and then discussion about the variables. When formulating the research problem, first thing you have to do is identify a broad area of interest. You have to identify a broad area of interest. You have to select a topic from the area which you are more interested in. Means you have to select a topic to conduct research from the area in which you are more interested. It may be ELT or corpus linguistics or discourse analysis, whatever you are interested in. You have to select the topic from that area because it would be a longer study. It may be maybe your MPhil or PhD research or thesis may require 3 or 5 years of study, so the topic should be interesting for you, so that in the long run you should not be bored from your topic, and if you are more interested in your topic, you would be performing better. Say for example, if you are interested in human behavior, there are several aspects of human behavior. You have to limit and delimit your topic so that you should complete your research in time. There are several aspects of human behavior. Say for example, you are more interested in motivation, so you would select that. Dividing broad areas into sub areas. This is related with limiting your topic from general to specific. And then focusing on and selecting an area of interest. You have to focus on the area of interest. For example, from human behavior, you are more interested in learning about motivation. Identifying the gaps and raising research questions. You have to identify the gap in research, and then you have to formulate your own research questions. In the end, you have to answer those research questions while concluding your research. Next step is formulation of broad objectives. You have to formulate objectives of your study. When you are formulating objectives of your study, you should be very careful. Your objectives of the study should be relevant to the research questions. Your objectives should be clearly written, as your research questions are written in a clear language. And single research question should mean single. It should give single sense, not double sense. You would formulate objectives of your study, which are very important. Your whole study depends on the objectives. Say for example, you want to conduct a research on motivation. Say for example, you want to analyze whether the workers' motivation is increased if they are given incentive, or their motivation is not increased. So you would say that objective of this study is to analyze workers' motivation if their incentives are increased. So you would formulate objectives of your study. After formulating the broad objectives, you have next step is assessing and reviewing objectives. You have to assess and review the objectives. Means you have to keep the objectives in order. The most important and the major objectives should be first in the list, and the minor objectives which are not very much relevant to your major objectives, those should be written at the end. And when we say assessing and reviewing objectives, that means when we are assessing and reviewing the objectives we have already designed or formulated, we would exclude those objectives which are not very relevant or which are not important. Which do not correspond to our research, which do not correspond to our research questions. Objectives should be limited, and at the end of the study, keep in mind the objectives should be achieved. Say for example, objective of our study is to measure the motivation, so at the end it should do that. Factors to be considered in selecting a research problem. There are several factors which we as researchers should keep in mind when we are selecting a research problem or topic of our research. Say for example, we are trying to conduct research on motivation. We have to keep in mind several points when selecting a research problem. Say for example, number one, the most important thing is our interest, whether we are interested in that topic or not. We should select the topic which is interesting for us, so that we should not get bored and we should perform better in conducting research on that topic, because that is interesting for us. So the topic should be chosen from the field in which we are interested. Say for example, if you are more interested in ELT, or you are more interested in discourse analysis or corpus linguistics, you would be selecting the topic of your research or research problem from the same area. Next thing which we have to consider when selecting a research problem is manageable magnitude of topic. Say for example, we have to select a topic which we can complete in the specified time. Say for example, you are selecting a topic for your MPhil studies or for your PhD studies that would be for 3 years or 5 years. So you should select a topic which you can complete in 3 years or 5 years. So it should be manageable. You should not select a topic which is very vast, which you cannot manage in the specified time and resources. The next thing which you have to keep in mind while selecting a research problem is concept measurement or concept clarity. That means you have to select a topic which you are clear about. You have to select a topic which has a clear concept in your mind. Do not select a topic which is not very clear to you, so that in the long run you may not face any problems dealing with that topic. Next point is level of expertise. That means you have to select a topic in which you are expert. For example, you are expert in English language teaching, or you are expert in corpus linguistics research, or you are more expert in discourse analysis. According to your expertise or level of expertise, you have to select your research problem so that you can manage it in a very good way. Next point is relevance. That means the topic you are selecting, it should be very much relevant to the society. It should have some importance to society or in society. If you select a topic which is no more important in the society, or which does not have any relevance in the society, it would not be very significant. Say for example, if you conduct a research about barter system which is no more in use in society, so the research would not be relevant. So whenever you are selecting your research problem or topic of your study, you should carefully see that the topic should be relevant to the society, and it should be according to the needs of society. And next thing you have to check is availability of data. Whenever you are selecting a research topic or research problem, you have to check whether enough data is available so that you can produce a thesis or dissertation about that topic. If the data is scarce or data is not available, that would be problematic for you in the long run. So it's important for you to check the availability of data before selecting the topic or when you are selecting the topic. And next thing is ethical issues. Whenever you are selecting a research problem or research topic, you have to keep in mind the ethical issues. Means your topic should be relevant to your culture and your society. It should not conflict with your society or your norms and values. Say for example, your topic should be acceptable in the society. You should not choose such a topic which is ethically not acceptable in the society. So ethical issues are very important in research. If you select a topic which is not acceptable in society, your research would not be appreciated. So try to select a topic which is ethically correct and relevant to your society. Enough data is available. You are expert in that topic, you can manage that topic, and should be limited, and you should be more interested in that topic. Step 2, I consider, is literature review or review of the literature, ROL. Literature review is actually the review of already existing literature to identify the gap in research. Literature is actually the reported studies, the research which is already done, and the researcher reviews the literature which is already written or the research which is already done, so that he can conduct his research in a better way. The procedure for reviewing literature covers searching the existing literature, reviewing it, and developing a theoretical and conceptual framework. So when you are reviewing the literature, you have to review the literature. You have to search the existing literature, review it, and develop a theoretical and conceptual framework. You have to see that the existing literature has a gap, and that gap your study would fulfill. Wherever you see there is some question arises or there is some gap in literature, you would conduct a study and answer that question which is unanswered, which needs to be researched. So literature review actually guides us and helps us in formulating a topic of our research. The main source of literature review are books and journals. Because books and journals give authentic knowledge. Sometimes some students get data from Google, from Wikipedia, which is substandard data. For the sake of research, we have to use the data which is standard, and we excuse me, sorry. So the main sources of authentic information or literature review are books and journals. At the end of the literature review, you have to give bibliography. The purpose of giving bibliography is to acknowledge that these resources or sources we are using we are getting information from these people, from these resources. Bibliography given at the end of the project gives a clear and complete description of the sources that were used while preparing the report. When you are writing your dissertation, when you are writing your thesis, you need lots of information from other researchers. You review the literature which is already existing, the already conducted research. And at the end of your thesis, at the end of your dissertation, you have to write the bibliography in which you have to give references of the books and journals. Purpose of reviewing literature is, there are several purposes of reviewing the literature. It broadens the knowledge of researcher about the research problem. Means when the researcher studies already existing literature, his knowledge of that area is broadened. He understands his research problem in a better way by studying the already existing literature. Number 2, it brings better clarity and focus to the research problem. When the researcher reviews the already existing literature, it gives him clarity and focus to the research problem. It improves the authenticity of research. When you are reviewing the already existing literature, it gives authenticity of research. Means you have already seen what other researchers have done on the similar topic and what you are doing. It helps to improve the research methodology. When you are reviewing the already existing literature, you would see that what research methodology other researchers have used in the past and what research methodology you are using. So reviewing the literature would be helpful for you in the sense that it helps to improve research methodology, then it reduces the redundancy of data. It gives more clarity to you about the data you are dealing with. So these are the major purposes of reviewing the literature. Reviewing the literature actually gives you a clear understanding of your own topic and how you would be dealing with your topic of research in future. Formulation of objectives. Next is step 3 is formulation of objectives. It also needs a careful effort when you are formulating the research objectives. Your research objectives should be relevant to the research questions. There are 2 types of objectives which are used in research. The main objectives or aims and the sub-objectives. Main objectives are those objectives which are relevant to your main research questions, which are relevant to the research questions, and sub-objectives are those objectives which are minor objectives. They are not very much relevant to your major questions. Then next is types of variables. There are several types of variables used in research. First is the independent variable and the other is dependent variable. Variables are actually used to measure the effects of something on the other thing. Independent variables are also known as manipulated, experimental, or treatment variables. They are presumed to be the cause of another variable. The independent variables are independent. They are not affected by the change in dependent variable. If you say one is independent variable and number two is dependent variable, if independent variable changes, number one changes, second variable, yani dependent variable would also change accordingly. But if the second variable, dependent variable, changes, it would not affect the dependent variable. The independent variable, means variable 1, would not be affected by the change in variable 2. Dependent variables are also known as the outcome or response variables, are the presumed effect or outcome. Dependent variables are influenced by one or more independent variables. So dependent variables are always affected by the change in independent variable. That is why they are called response variables. If independent variables change, the dependent variable would also change accordingly. Say for example, we take an example of demand and supply. If supply is the dependent variable and demand is the independent variable, and if the independent variable demand increases, the supply would also increase because it is dependent variable. And if demand decreases, being independent variable, the supply would also decrease because it is dependent variable. So whenever independent variable changes, it affects the dependent variable. Dependent variable always changes in accordance to the changes in independent variables. Independent variables are called independent variables because they are not affected by any type of change in dependent variables. They are independent of any effect. They are not affected by the change in independent variables. But dependent variables depend on independent variables. They are always affected by the change in independent variables. These two variables are very important in research. In every type of research, these two variables are used to see the effect. Another example is that if you are using a specific learning methodology or teaching methodology in the class, students' learning achievement would also be affected. So using a particular research method, teaching methodology or learning methodology in the class is an independent variable, and learner's achievement is dependent variable because it changes accordingly. The next thing is measurement variables, measurement scales. There are several variable measurement scales used in research. First of all, here we are studying about the quantitative research. In quantitative research, first of all, the measurement scales which are used are, number one, the nominal scale. It is also called as classificatory scale, a variable which has more than one subcategory. It measures on this scale. For example, subjects of course curriculum. If we want to measure the subjects of course curriculum. There is one course curriculum which has different subjects in it, subject 1, subject 2, subject 3. So we want to measure the subjects of course curriculum. We would use nominal scale. Next is ordinal or ranking scale. It usually ranks the subgroups in a certain sequence or order. For example, marks obtained in each subject. This is relevant to ordinal, means we keep the things in order or in ranks. It usually ranks the subgroups in certain sequence or order. For example, marks obtained in each subject, we keep it in sequence that how many marks one student has attained or obtained in one subject. The highest would be, we would be starting from highest to the lowest. Highest would be on the top and the lowest would be at the bottom. And next is interval scale. Interval scale, as we see what is interval. Intervals are after a particular period, after a particular time. Say for example, in 1 year we have 12 months, and 12 months we divide them into 4 parts. In every part there would be 3 months, means 3 quarters. And if we want to measure students' performance after a particular time, after a particular interval, we would be conducting exams after every 3 months to check their performance, to check their achievements. So this type of scale is called the interval scale. It uses a unit of measurement with an arbitrary starting and terminating points. For example, students' marks in each quarter. So in each quarter, after every 3 months, students' marks, or the researcher or teacher has to measure, are their marks rising or their marks are getting less marks, or they are getting more marks, to measure if they are improving or not. The next scale is ratio scale. Ratio scale, as from its name you can guess, it is relevant to the ratio. It is used in quantitative data. They are used to gather quantitative information. It combines the properties of nominal, ordinal, and internal scales. It has a fixed starting point and its ending point is not known. So it has a fixed starting point. This is a bit complex type of scale which is used in research. These are 4 scales which deal with quantitative type of data. And the next scales which are used in qualitative type of data are called the attitudinal scales. Attitudinal scales are used to deal with the qualitative data. As the name shows, it is more relevant to the attitude. Person's attitude. The studies which are relevant to person's thinking, their attitude, these studies are relevant to qualitative research. If we want to ascertain the attitude of your population, this scale is used. The attitudinal scales are very important in qualitative research. The different types of attitudinal scales are there. Are several different types of attitudinal scales. First and most important scale is the Likert scale. You might have already listened about this. This is mostly used in designing the questionnaires. Say for example, in the questionnaire we want to get a response in using 5-point Likert scale, like strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. This is 5-point Likert scale. It is also termed as Smeated rating scale. It is the easiest one to conduct. It is based upon the assumption that each statement or item on the scale is relevant. So this is mostly used in qualitative research, and it is common. Next is Thurstone scale. In such type of scale, we divide the variables as A, B, C, D, and then we give them numbers like A, 1, 3, 4, 5. So through proper planning and through proper way, we measure it. Thurstone scale, it may assign weightage to the different variables and the scores are calculated accordingly. Then next is Gutman scale. It is mainly based on ratio scale. It is quite difficult to develop. This type of scale is a bit difficult scale. Formulating hypothesis. Now the lecture time has completed, so we would be studying about the formulating hypothesis in the next lecture. Thank you so much, class. Have a good day. Take care. The things which are not clear to you, we would be studying or discussing them in the next lecture. Take care. Goodbye.